In 2018, there's a plan for new acreages and marginal field licensing, and then of course the early license renewals, where people with OMLs carrying over the next 3 years. The plan is to accelerate those renewals. It's a win-win situation. Government gets in revenues earlier, but then for those operators, it also takes out the risk of the uncertainty of whether the OMLs will be renewed, and that makes it easier and cheaper for them to finance their operations. And then forward sale arrangements of government share of some portion of the oil and sold forward, and then NLNG dividends, which have been fairly predictable over the years, so some future stream of that is also then being, monetized. This to basically bring in the needed resources to invest in infrastructure that would then, positively impact revenues going forward. The fiscal regime for the PSCs is being, reviewed to improve government stake. Then we have the restructuring of government's equity in the joint ventures. Today, the average government equity in the joint ventures is 57.5%. The goal here is to bring that average to 40%. But this is not just about the resources that will release to government, but this is expected to significantly improve efficiencies as the private sector then takes the lead role in those JVs and invest more and basically ultimately we see that even with a reduced shareholding, that government's revenues will be better. So then we have increase in excise rates on alcohol and tobacco. I know some people here will not be very happy about it, but we believe that this will challenge the affected operators to even reduce their production and other costs. The BP has listed some non-oil assets for privatization and sorry, not commissioning, concessioning, please. I'm sorry. And it's a fairly ambitious program they have for 2018, and we think that corporate investors, auditors, investment bankers, lawyers, and so on should be very happy with this. The 2018 budget, I'm sure we've all seen the numbers. I won't bore you with that, but this says where the money is coming from. It shows where the revenues are coming from. This shows that in terms of percentages, as I said, oil revenue is 37%. There still remains the largest chunk of that. Then this shows where the money is going. Okay. Okay. And then we still have a deficit budget for 2018, a declining deficit, and that's consistent with the the ERGP, but nonetheless, 2 trillion naira of deficit for 2018 is projected, but you can see that's now down to 1.77% of GDP. The new borrowings remains the principal source of financing these deficits, but privatization proceeds, that's the non-oil assets that the BP is selling, that's 306 billion naira federal government share, and this doesn't include the 710 billion naira that we expect to get from the reduction in the JV assets, which has been included as revenue. Let me now get into what most people really want to hear. Remember, I said there are 5 execution priorities of the ERGP. The budget is fully aligned with the ERGP. So what I'm going to do is just take each of those 5 priority areas and look at the policy thrust of the budget, some provisions included in the budget, and then what this means essentially for for government. So the agri sector is one that government is focusing a lot on and has seen some reasonable growth and has been growing even through the period of recession at over 3%. Okay, these are some of the provisions for expenditure in there. But in terms of opportunities, the budget envisages development of value chain across 30 different commodities, and this includes supply, production, processing, transportation, trading, marketing, exports, and these provide significant opportunities for business. Land leasing arrangements, even land clearing is big business. Our tractorization rate is abysmal. So tractor rentals, so there's just a lot of opportunities even for research into better production methods. In terms of ensuring energy efficiency, okay, the goal here is to boost local refining capacity. Government's goal is by the end of this medium-term plan period, the 2020, to be self-sufficient, for the country to be self-sufficient in refined petroleum products. And of course, the power by 2020 to at least have 10,000 megawatts of optimized capacity. This sounds a very tame goal, and some people have accused the ERGP of lacking in ambition regarding the power sector. But we think that this is more realistic than the sort of goals that we have had in the past. To get to this, 10,000 megawatts optimized means you can generate that consistently, you can transmit that consistently, you can distribute that to consumers, consistently. That's basically the goal. And even to get to that is a very significant amount of investment between now and 2020. Okay, so of course, the opportunities that presents for business. But one area of opportunity that even Mr. Branson, who's been talking down Nigeria, since the misadventure of Virgin Nigeria, is now talking up is the investment opportunity in off-grid power in Nigeria. Okay, these are some of the provisions in the budget. Then improving transportation, essentially across the different modes, rail, road, air, they're just big opportunities. The infrastructure, you wouldn't believe the impact of transportation costs. Food inflation has been sticky, and that's part of what's been holding up the inflation rate. Transportation cost is a significant driver of food costs and the food inflation that we have. So if we make the sort of investments required here, inflation around food will be even lower. So there are just lots of opportunities here, which this driving industrialization, whether it's in manufacturing, solid minerals, there are significant opportunities. The solid minerals sector, coming from a very low base, is growing, quite significantly, and there's greater orderliness in that sector now. The policy environment is, more predictable, and it's really a sector that you should, take a look at. Okay. And then we have the special economic zones, which, recognizing that in this medium term we can't fix the infrastructure generally to the level that business desires, focusing on some of these zones to basically, create the sort of infrastructure that is required. And I have here, a list of the places where we're focusing on this. The export expansion grant is being, restored. We believe that the social investment, program, on which the government has been budgeting 500 billion naira a year, also provides some opportunities for, business, especially also with the new housing program, where the intention is to spend 100 billion naira. There are other initiatives on the budget that will impact business in 2018. The Corporate Affairs Commission has moved the entire business registration process online, which reduces time required to register from 10 to 2 days. Lagos State has operationalized its e-planning platform, allowing submission of construction permit applications online. These were some of the goals that were agreed between the federal government and Lagos and Kano, that on a number of these indices serve as a proxy for Nigeria, and it's the progress made on some of these factors that saw Nigeria do a 24 point leap on the ease of doing business index. Immigration in better, but you're the judge of that. Customs, the goal, of course, is to implement the customs single window, soon. But even ahead of that, they're making some progress in coordinating the cargo examination. CBN is committing to generate stability and predictability. The central bank actually argues that if they wanted today, the naira could revalue. It doesn't seem to listen. But essentially, they have opted to go for building up reserves. And so they're buying in the market and buying, and that's part of what sustained demand. There's a commitment to see greater harmonization of monetary, trade, and fiscal policies in 2018 and forward. Let me conclude by just saying that we expect the initiatives I've outlined, basically to support business activities, economic diversification, and inclusive growth through 2018 and beyond. We expect the 2018 budget to stimulate investment in some critical sectors. The finance sector, we expect will benefit from the investments in government securities. Government will still continue to borrow, still running a fiscal deficit, but also expect them to profit by servicing manufacturing, trade, and small businesses. You can see that I singled out the finance sector for sweetening up, because that's a sector that we think needs to step up, and support government's development objectives more than perhaps they've done in the past. Note, I was introduced as an ex-banker. So I speak as an ex-banker who now knows better. Okay, so we hope that private sector investors will leverage the opportunities that this budget presents.